So in Texas, the police and the prosecutors, when it comes to drug allegations, they're looking at two things. First, what was the substance, right? Because we're going to treat marijuana very differently than we're going to treat methamphetamine, right? And the second thing they're looking at is the quantity or the weight, how much of the substance somebody had. Because again, we're going to treat 1 ounce of marijuana very differently than we're going to treat 6 pounds of marijuana. And we're going to treat one illegal pill of Xanax very differently than we're going to treat 150 illegal pills of Xanax. The other thing we're looking out for is whether they're saying you had possession of it or whether you were looking to sell it. In Texas, we call that selling, intent to deliver, and it's basically a fancy way of saying you were dealing drugs. Those penalties and those consequences are much, much more harsh than mere possession. So, for example, marijuana in Texas, THC. The law has kind of fallen behind the times. And so what we see with a lot of younger clients is that they've kind of gone away from like organic leafy marijuana, like we're kind of used to seeing on TV and in movies, in favor of liquid THC. These are the vape pens and things like that. The issue that comes up is that marijuana, the organic, the leafy stuff, is almost always a very low level misdemeanor. However, having the THC in liquid form, even a drop of it, is an automatic felony and carries such harsh penalties as opposed to its misdemeanor counterparts, right? And so we want to be really careful with young people because those felony convictions, even for having something as simple as a THC pen, it can really cause a lot of problems in their future with schooling, with education, with loans, and things like that. So the thing to know about drug-free zones in Texas is that it's going to cover a lot of places like daycares and schools, but it's not actually just the location. It's actually 100 feet away from the location as well. So even if you're near the school, within 100 feet, you could be charged with drug possession in a drug-free zone. And so what does that mean? It means that you're going to have enhanced penalties. A lot of times those drug offenses, which would normally be a low-level misdemeanor, are bumped up to a felony offense because of the nature of the enhancement of being in a drug-free zone. So in Texas, we have the 3 strikes rule. The variation of it these days is essentially if you have a second felony conviction or a third felony conviction, the consequences go up dramatically, okay? In Texas, having a prior felony conviction, the second one will make you a repeater. And the third felony offense will make you a habitual offender in Texas, and you could be facing up to life in prison. So it's important to reminder that these are just for felonies. Misdemeanors don't apply, but the 3 strikes rule is something that's very harsh in Texas. And if you have multiple felonies, you could be looking at life in prison. So a situation that comes up a lot in Texas is this THC liquid, the vape pens and things like that. The issue is a lot of this stuff is legal in other states. And so you'll have people flying in or driving through Texas, and all of a sudden they get pulled over and they got this stuff on them and it's legal where they're from, but because they're in Texas, they're now faced with a serious drug offense. Remember, THC in liquid form is always going to be a felony and it's always going to be taken really, really serious by the courts. This is one of these situations where the legislature is just kind of behind the times. Even in the 20 years that I've been practicing law, I've seen the shift from young people kind of switching from the organic marijuana that you see in movies and TVs over to these vape pens and edibles and things like that. The issue is that the legislature has not adjusted. And so those cases are treated as severe felonies, the same as cocaine or methamphetamine. And those kids, even if they're coming from states where it's legal, they're now facing serious punishments in Texas. So sometimes a situation comes up where we'll have somebody from out of state or out of county, and they'll come through Texas and they'll get pulled over, arrested for something like THC or marijuana that's legal in their state, but because it's not legal in Texas, they get arrested. So they go through the exact same process a Texas resident would go through, meaning that they got to get bonded, they got to go to court, and all of those things are going to happen in the county that they were arrested in. The court's not going to care that you live 18 hours away somewhere in Denver, right? They're going to drag you back to court as much as possible. So one of the benefits of hiring kind of a good local criminal defense firm is that we can try to minimize the amount of times our clients have to fly in or drive in from out of county or out of state by using resets and postponements and things like that in order to reduce the amount of stress and expense associated with getting a case out of state. So Texas takes drug crimes very seriously. We've handled a lot of them over the years. If you've got an issue, let us know. Come in for a free consultation. We'll walk through your case, the strategies, ways we've seen these cases get dismissed or dropped, help you get through the entire process. That way it doesn't have a long lasting effect on your life.